Hello, good vach everyone. Pashas Vayakil, Pashas Shkolim. Interesting. One of the unique aspects of this week's Parsha is that in the very beginning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, that he should gather Bnei Yisrael, Vayakil. Is that the whole thing of Vayakil seems to be for one mitzvah of Shabbos. That's the first thing right after Vayakil, tell Bnei Yisrael about Shabbos. And then Hashem talks to Moshe Rabbeinu about the Mishkan. Very interesting. Obviously, Pasha Skolim, everything. It's a preparation already for Purim. So the Orach Chaim asks, what's this inyan of Shabbos as a standalone emphasis right after Vayakil? Gather the entire Am Yisrael and tell them about the mitzvah of Shabbos. And then it talks about the Mishkan and various things about the Mishkan. So the basic idea that the Orach Chaim is speaking about is that Am Yisrael did not have mitzvahs to get them, so they should be eligible to have the Mishkan and so forth and so on. So the first thing that was given to them is the mitzvah of Shabbos. And what seems to be the idea that is coming out of what the Orach Chaim HaKadosh is saying is the profound inyan of mikvah. Shabbos acting as a mikvah. Am Yisrael, as it were, Am Yisrael does not have the mitzvahs that it takes to merit whatever it is that they're supposed to get, building the Mishkan and whatnot. So they're going into Shabbos. So it seems as if the Orach Chaim HaKadosh is saying that Shabbos is an all-encompassing, purifying experience. Because the very same way that, the mikveh is something that you go into, you immerse yourself in it, and you go totally underwater. Shabbos, similarly, is something that you are totally into it. In other words, there's no keeping yourself out of the mitzvah. It's not. It's just Shabbos is. It's all pervasive. It's all prevailing. On Sichos, even Sukkah is a mitzvah that you're going into with everything you got. But nevertheless, there's during Sukkah that time that you're not in the Sukkah, right? So you can be in the Sukkah or outside the Sukkah. There's no such thing in Shabbos. Shabbos, you can't get in and out of Shabbos. Once Shabbos comes in, you're in it. It's the same way with, the concept of a mitzvah, of a mikveh. And the concept of a mikveh, we spoke about it once before. That what is what is so unique about mikveh that enables somebody who is tumadik to become pure, that enables a ger to become a Jew. Ger that doesn't turn in the mikveh is, remains a goy. The last part, it's the thing that. Now we know about the ger. They have this really futile argument in the politicians about Geiris, about easing the the gateway, whatever it is, easing the requirements for what? For more going to be able to come Jews, which is nonsense. And the reason why it's nonsense is because Geiris, conversion, does not depend on what this Beis Din says or another Beis Din says. A ger becomes a Jew because he gets a neshama. So if the geris is not a true geris, he doesn't get the neshama. It's gon shmitnish, it's fake. The whole thing is worthless. And it is symbolized by, by dunking in a mikveh, immersing in a mikveh. And we spoke about it once before, that this inyan of a mikveh is when a person goes into an environment in which he cannot possibly live, because he can't breathe underwater. You need gills for that. So this inyan of a mikveh symbolizes leaving the world where you can live and going into an environment that you cannot live. When a person is in a mikveh, usually you don't pay attention to that. But when you're on the water, if you were to think about it, if chas v'shalom, something will prevent you from getting your head above water, you're done for. That's it. Adrabah, Rabbeinu says that there's an inyan to ameliorate the judgments of a person, for a person to remain immersed until he can no longer hold, he doesn't have air anymore. He must breathe. To get really close to that, there is a bigger amelioration of the judgments. To stay underwater until the last minute possible, as it were. The inyan of immersing in a mikveh, as we said a few times before, is the concept of dying, spiritually dying. The mitzvahs that you were before dies, and you get out of the water and you become alive. You get a new life. Before you entered the mikveh, you were tumadik. Why should the water take it away from you? Because you are, in a sense, a different person. It's not such a wild concept, because the thing is that it happens to us when we go to sleep every night. The neshama actually leaves you. The inyan of a mikveh, of Mayim Chaim, is that the water gives you a new life. So the inyan of Yakel, of gathering together, of Shabbos, seems to be that the Orach Chaim HaKadosh is referring to this inyan of Shabbos acting as a mikveh. Am Yisrael doesn't have any other schusim, so when a person goes into the quote unquote mikveh of Shabbos, it says you call him Shabbos, anybody who keeps Shabbos, the way it's supposed to, he's forgiven all his averes. If his Am Yisrael are keeping two Shabbosim, immediately, the Mashiach is coming. It's a huge thing. In other words, you're ending one period of life and you're entering another in this world. It's an immense concept. So it seems to be mashma from the words of Orach Chaim HaKadosh. Rabbi Nosson speaks about the union of Pasha Shkolim, the union of giving a shekel. So like why are the Jews supposed to be, counted with half a shekel, with money, and you cannot count the Jewish people themselves. If Chas v'Chalila, the Jewish people are counted by themselves, this leaves them exposed to plagues. Shem Yirachim. The nekuda of this is that, as Rabbeinu says in Torah Memtes, that we're learning on Thursday night, the Kodesh Baruch Hu is one, and He's everything. He constitutes everything. So Kodesh Baruch Hu is everything. That means that there is no room for anything else. Nothing else can exist as an independent existence. Being a Kodesh Baruch Hu is everything. We said that's the Kodesh Baruch Hu has to sort of constrict himself and create a conceptual space within himself. It's called Chol HaPanim. And in that Chol HaPanim, all the worlds can be created. This kind of concept is, that Kodesh Baruch Hu is holding himself back and sort of taking himself out of the scene, as it were, so that other things can exist, so they can have room, so they can have place, so they can grow. We also say that this is, the very basis of all relationships. You can't have, a despotic rule, over any situation and expect to have relationships in it. It's not a relationship if you are the only one who has a say. In order for a relationship to exist, you have to hold yourself back and let the other side, have breathing room and space to express themselves. But the minute that there is already plurality, in other words, there is a number already. Plurality means that is already existence for good and bad. In unity, it is all good. Because Baruch Hu is all good. There's nothing else what to talk about. Plurality represents the possibility of bad to exist. That's why, they say that the very mention of purity is already a concept that is only relevant when there is tumah in existence. Kodesh is all one. Tahar, pure, is only shaykh when you have something which is not pure and it becomes pure. When you're saying that something is pure, you are automatically inferring that there is a possibility of impurity. It's like when you're saying that something is emes, something is true. That already implies that something else can be untrue. That's why they say that the seal of a Kadosh Baruch Hu is emes. What is it? The seal of Kadosh Baruch Hu is emes. He says, what is a seal? A seal is something that when it creates an imprint, the imprint is the negative of the printing press. You know, where the stamp, you know, bulges, the imprint, you know, is ground out. A signet ring that you put in wax. So it's the opposite of one another. So lemaisa, what you're saying in when you're talking about emes, we said that the emes is the seal, the imprint of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, that's the closest existence in this world to Kiviyachol, the essence of Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's the keli with which you can receive the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the emes. But nevertheless, vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were, even emes is a lie. Why? Because emes, per definition, means that when something is true, it means it could be something else which is untrue. So why are you saying this is true? You need to differentiate it from something else which is not true. So that possibility of something being untrue is the same concept of emes, is the same concept of purity. Am Yisrael have to be, there has to be plurality. Each neshama is a chelek l'kamimal. Each one is supposed to have its own boundaries, and these boundaries cannot be transgressed. Am Yisrael b'chlal, and every single Jew b'frat is supposed to have his own boundaries. Very same way that when you come to the Kedusha, the Har Sinai, Kadosh Baruch Hu said, set boundaries of Har Sinai. A Jew cannot go up, racing up into the Kedusha, because what happens is it becomes nullified. The same way, one Jew cannot breach the boundaries of another Jew, because every single Jew in and on himself is really infinite. Here is in a body, he's separate. By counting the Jews themselves, you are affixing a number on them. This, in other words, you're affixing plurality on them. This is the source of plague. That's a source of curse. You can't do that. So you do, the Jewish people give a shekel, you count the shkolim, and with that, from that, you can count the shkolim and know how many Jews there are, but you can't count the Jews themselves, because the Jews have to retain, on one hand, to be to multiply and to be plural. On the other hand, they have to retain the aspect of unity. They are not counted. They belong to one. Shukulo toiv. That is total good. There's no Lora Avon B'Yakov. There's no possibility of a bad in Am Yisrael. So Bechira, Mimela, there are all kinds of, but you can't count the Jews because the Jews are beyond counting. You can only count the money, but not count the Jews. At Kan, all shmooze of this week's Parsha. Let's take a look with Shem on the Maisa of the Baal Shem Tov for this week. It's a segula, for a bracha for the week. So B'ezrat Hashem, when this shir is dedicated for the refuah of Caroline Selma, Bas Florence of Fege. My mother-in-law should be healthy, B'ezrat Hashem. We have good news from her. Okay. one time, the Baal Shem HaKadosh came to spend Shabbos in one of the villages. When that word was heard in the Jew that was leasing the inn, that the Baal Shem Tov came to this village, immediately he ran and invited him to spend Shabbos by him. Because that renter, that leaser, didn't have any children. And he said to himself, maybe now I will have a salvation, a deliverance, because the Baal Shem Tov, Bezat Hashem, will give me a bracha, I should have children. So the Baal Shem Tov comes to the village, and he sees that renter, the guy that rents the inn, the innkeeper, coming to him and asking him if he can please spend Shabbos by him. So, he already, when that renter, the innkeeper, came to the Baal Shem Tov already asked him, can I spend Shabbos by you? The innkeeper said, of course. So the Baal Shem Tov asked him, are you going to have a minyan? So the innkeeper counted how many people he had, and he said, altogether we'll have 9 people. Well, the Baal Shem Tov says, okay, B'ezrat Hashem, therefore we'll have a minyan. When the Baal Shem Tov came with his wagon to the inn, miraculously, the gate of the inn was too narrow, was too low for the wagon of Baal Shem Tov, and it actually became bigger, and the wagon could come in, and the people that were there, they saw this amazing miracle happens. Baal Chasanya says, no, now I know for sure, B'ezrat Hashem, that I will have a deliverance. No. After Chatzois, apparently Mincha Ktana, Baal Shem Tov, Mincha Gdoila, Baal Shem Tov asked, to gather a minyan, daven Mincha of Shabbos, the way the minyan of Baal Shem Tov was davening an early Mincha. And they saw that there were only 9 people. And the Baal Shem Tov said, Bevad there'll be a minyan. And there were some people that were, sniggering. They were like, they did not believe that they're going to have a minyan there. While this was going on, there was a thought, the Baal Chasanya, the innkeeper, had a thought that the other side of the river, there is a small house, and with Lola, a sick Jew, who is like, is almost like a vegetable. He's only eating whatever they feed him a little bit, and this is it. So the innkeeper told the Baal Shem Tov that on the other side of the river, there's this, very sick person. Baal Shem Tov said, bring him in, let him, be mashlam a minyan. And he said, take my staff, my stick, and put it in his hand, and let him come to daven. So they went to the sick person. They gave him the stick, but he didn't get up. He didn't move. So the Baal Shem Tov took the hat from his head, and he said, go ahead and put my hat over his head, in the stick in his hand, and Bevada he'll come. And this is what happens. They went, they put the Baal Shem Tov's hat over the sick person's head, and they put the Baal Shem Tov's stick in his head. He got up from bed, and he came to Mashlam Amini from Baal Shem Tov. And not only that he became healthy, he lived for a long time afterwards. When the Baal Chasanya saw these 2 miracles the Baal Shem Tov has performed, with the wagon and the sick person, and he came to the Baal Shem Tov, and he said, he's already, he was middle-aged, and he said he still doesn't have children. and it's only a question of time. He's going to be too old to have children. So the Baal Shem Tov said, "Don't worry, you're going to have children." And so this Yid lived till age 60, and his wife Lo Alina passed away, and he married another woman, and he had two children, two boys, from that woman at age 60, and the bracha of the Baal Shem Tov it came true. I was, they say, I think Reb Levi Yitzchok used to say that whenever it is that we say stories of the Baal Shem Tov, invariably we tell the stories of the miracles that he performed. But whenever it is, that we tell stories of Rabbeinu Nachman, we never say stories about the miracles that he performed. He performed more miracles than the Baal Shem Tov. But he said he always davened to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you should forget the miracles that he performed. The moifsim that they tell, about him, are all moifsim that have to do with Avodas Hashem. What he wants us to do in Avodas Hashem, his eitzes in Avodas Hashem, how hard we should daven, how hard we should keep our purity and our sanctity, and what we should keep. That is the stories that we tell from Rabbi Nachman. We don't tell the stories of miracles. The stories of Avodas Hashem. The Baal Shem Tov was filled with Avodas Hashem. When the Baal Shem came into the world, it changed the entire paradigm of Yiddishkeit. It's very difficult for some people to understand that, but when we mention that there were 5 incarnations of Moshe Rabbeinu, and in the form of Tzaddik Yechidei Adoros, the unique tzaddikim, this quantum tzaddikim, that you cannot compare anybody else to them. Like you cannot compare anybody to Moshe Rabbeinu. I mean, the biggest tzaddikim, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, are incomparable. Moshe Rabbeinu is incomparably superior to any tzaddik, and it doesn't matter. It's not that he's greater. You can't say even greater. You cannot say that a person is greater than a donkey. There's no comparison. You're comparing, there's apples and oranges. There's no comparison b'chlal. It's not only different species. It's a different phylum. I mean, it's a different thing. So Moshe Rabbeinu was like a quantum tzaddik. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was a quantum tzaddik. As we said, in the very beginning, before Torah Aleph Likutei Moharan, there is the famous Torah that Rabbeinu said about, come and see the wonders of the Torah, that the Holy Torah, and that when Rabbi Seina came to the vineyard in Yavne, and they said that in the future the Torah will be forgotten from Am Yisrael. Ad kedei kach, I mean, they saw, the Roman Empire was suffocating everybody, and it was to the point that Rabbi Eliezer, Reza Gadol, said, he came up with a suggestion that the Yidden should be forbidden to get married. In other words, if the Yidden are going to forget the Torah, there's no reason why Jews should exist. So he came up with the idea, let's make a decree, no more getting married. Okay, so that decrees were taken off the table. Chacham didn't agree with him. But nevertheless, you can see the degree of danger that Am Yisrael was. If there's no Torah, there's no Am Yisrael. There's no point. So Rabbeinu says over there that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, he's also Tana, and he said that he had a pasuk. He says, "Ki lo sishokach mipi zara," for the Torah shall not be forgotten from the mouth of his offspring. So the last letters of this pasuk, "Ki lo sishokach mipi zara," the end letter of every word together make the word Yochai. So the pasuk is like a remez within a remez, like it alludes to another alluding. The whole learning of Resha Tevis and Gimatrias and all these things, these belong, have Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. So the remez is all the Gimatrias, all the Resha Tevis, all the Sefer Tevis, all this, belong to the higher level of Torah, which is called remez, which is called a hint. So the pasuk itself, in the level of remez, in other words, the end letters of every word, themselves made another remez. They gave a hint with a combination of the pshat of the pasuk. What does the pasuk say? For it should not be forgotten from the mouth of his offspring. Whose offspring? Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said that in Sefer HaZohar, Am Yisrael will come out of the Galus. B'chibur Ada, with this compilation, this Sefer, the Iu Sefer HaZohar, which is the Zohar, Am Yisrael is going to come out of the Galus. So, which means that Shem Bar Yochai said that it is through him personally that the Torah will never be forgotten, because he's going to reveal the Sefer HaZohar, and with the strength of Sefer HaZohar, Am Yisrael is going to come out of the Galus. In other words, not only by learning Sefer HaZohar, by the fact that the Zohar already exists in the world, all the Litvish yeshivas that you see can learn Torah, because there's a Zohar in the world. Because the minute there's Zohar in the world, the Torah will never be forgotten. Then you can learn Kabbalah, you can learn Pshat, you can learn Halach, you can have everything. Because there was a Reb Shimon Bar Yochai in this world. Now take a quick look. In all the Gemara, in all the Mishnayos, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is spelled Yud Vav Ches Yud. In the Zohar, in Sefer HaZohar, it's the only place when Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the word Yochai is spelled Yud Vav Ches Aleph Yud. In other words, Reb Shimon ben Nigle is without the Aleph. Reb Shimon ben Nister in the Zohar, after the Ches is an Aleph. If you take the pasuk, Ki lo sishokach mipi zarei, the end letter of every word represents one letter of the name of Yochai. The pasuk says, listen, the Torah will not be forgotten from the mouth of the offspring of that person who is alluded to in the end letters. Yochai, who is his offspring? Reb Shimon. If you take the word of the letter Aleph out, like it is Reb Shimon in the Gemara, which word is going to be omitted? Which word has the last letter is the Aleph? Ki loy sishokach mipi zarei. The word loy, the word not, is the word that has Aleph in the end. Which means that without the Zohar, the word loy would be taken off. What you have left is ki sishokach mipi zaroi, for it will be forgotten from the mouth of his offspring. The loy, the aleph, is inserted with the zoyar. Yochai with an aleph. The aleph is inserted there. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai is not just for the zoyar. The zoyar itself gives a whole new paradigm. Yiddishkeit can exist because the zoyar itself exists. Tzaddik Yechid Adoros are those that they make Yiddishkeit possible. Not only their type of Yiddishkeit. When Arizal came around, it's not just that those who are in Kabbalah, had the new, there's a new revelation in Kabbalah. Bevada it was. But by the Arizal coming to this world, the entire Yiddishkeit could continue to exist. It changed the paradigm of the entire Yiddishkeit. The same thing with Baal Shem Tov. The same thing with Rabbeinu. It's a different era. And bekoyach of these tzaddikim, the entire Yiddishkeit exists. The people that agree with them, and the people that disagree with them. The people that go in their way, and the people that don't go in their way. They all exist with the koyach of this quantum tzaddikim. They changed the whole mahalach of Am Yisrael. So, with that, let's just take a quick look on Sichos Haran of this week, and let's see. We are at chapter Kuf Yud Aleph 111. Mishlei, Proverbs, Iveles Odom Tesalev Darkoi, the folly of men will skew his way. Ve'al Hashem yizaf liboy, and his heart will be upset with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, a person goofs up because of his own folly. Things don't work out. Who is upset with? He's upset with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And it says as follows: Mishe'eino mekusher or mekurav letzadik amiti. Anybody who is not tied and close to a true tzaddik, as kol avodosei, all his avodah, urak kmo misha me'akem atzmoi, somebody who is contorting himself, or misdam lechaver kekof, that he is imitating his friend, like a monkey imitating a person. The folly of a person, it sways his way, it scrambles his way. The hainu ha'adam aladei ivoltei, because of his own folly. All his avodah, all his avodah is it just verkrums his way, it twists his way, like somebody who is twisting himself and he's like imitating his friend. Why? The tanki ala Shem yizaf liboy. He's bearing a grudge on Hashem. Who's bearing a grudge for? In other words, he's bearing a grudge to the tzaddik. So b'chinas al Hashem. What does it mean? Tzaddik is al Hashem, which is over Hashem. He says yes, because the Gemara says, "Mi moshel bi tzaddik." Who controls me? Who rules me? The tzaddik. So al Hashem means that you're upset. You have a hatred that is directed at the tzaddik. You're disputing the tzaddik. You're not close to the tzaddik. And what that does, that twists your Yiddishkeit. It twists your way. Means your entire avodah is like somebody who is mimicking. So there's no mamish in this avodah. There's no real value in the avodah except through the tzaddik amiti, through the true tzaddik, the way that is said in a different place. Now, we are talking here about a very, very deep, immensely deep, and somewhat controversial concept. When you see Korach and the 250 Rosh Hashanah that disputed Moshe Rabbeinu, they did not want to become bottled to Moshe Rabbeinu. They say, we can be just like you. We are just as holy as you are. The entire congregation, they're all holy. And Hashem is, within them. And they took, the machtas of incense, and they said, they're going to bring him. And Moshe Rabbeinu told them, bringing the incense is, if you are not the one that the Kadosh Baruch Hu chooses, it becomes the death of you. Who is bigger than Nadav and Avihu, the children of Haran and Cohen, that brought the incense that they were not supposed to bring? They both died on the spot. And that's supposed to be Kahanim. 250 people, you understand that only one of you, either you or Haran and Cohen, is eligible to bring the incense. Everybody else will die. They still went ahead and did it. Why? Because they believed, each one believed that his way is the true Yiddishkeit. Tremendous thing. They're willing to put their lives on the line, quote unquote gambling, that their way is the true way. In other words, you're talking about huge, huge people. You're talking about people who are bigger than the Ramchal. They're big in the Tanoim. They're big in the Amoraim. They're big in the Chido. They're big in all the generations. These 250 Rosh Hashanah. The minute that they are not Davok in Moshe Rabbeinu, they're not connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, they don't adhere to Moshe Rabbeinu, they don't fuse themselves with Moshe Rabbeinu, all the avodah is a joke. It's an imitation of the real thing, but it's not the real thing. They all died. Now the thing is that, obviously, in our generation, people serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu the best way they can. They're bringing to the table with the best way they can. Every single tzaddik amiti that comes to the world, Shimon Bar Yochai, and the Rabbeinu Arizal, the Baal Shem Tov, enables people, not only people that are close to him, but even people that are against him, to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with something that they bring about. So the whole thing is not, but nevertheless, it's me'at shebe'me'at compared to what it could be, if they were actually connected to the tzaddik hamiti, to a true tzaddik. Bezat Hashem, this week, Bezat, of Rosh Chodesh, Oda Beis, Bezat Hashem, Purim coming along, tremendous month. Oda Beis is the only month that when you daven Musaf in Rosh Chodesh on Thursday and Friday, and usually every month have a specific conjugation of Shem Havaya, how you switch the letters around, and a certain conjugation of the name Eke, Aleph K Yud K. It's written in the Bnei Soschar. He brings it down. Every single month has one combination of Shem Havaya and Shem Eke for this particular month. Other base is the only month in which the combinations of all the months altogether are the combination of other base. In other words, all the combinations of Shem Havaya, the building of Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevis, Shvat, and everything, in order, the regular order, all the way to Elul, you have all of them. You have it. Keep in mind all of them for other base. The same thing with all 12 combinations to Shem Eke. Tremendous light, tremendous inyanim. Kosh Baruch Hu B'ezrat Hashem should give us all Hatzlacha and Refuah Shleimo, everybody that needs it. Me'alef Ataf, B'ezrat Hashem, Karlin Selma, Bas Florence Fega, B'ezrat Hashem should be gesund, and everything, she should come home, and everything should be fine, and everybody else in Am Yisrael, of course, all our friends here, and all our friends that are not here, each and every one of us will have a brius, a gesund, stark, and a lot of bracha and atzlacha. And B'ezrat Hashem, hopefully we will meet Monday night. Everything else stays the same. Monday night, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll learn Sipurey. And I want to wish you all the very best.